Human resources management, one of my favorite topics to talk about. So, today I'm going to share my screen with someone that's very experienced in this area, and together we're going to learn about all the opportunities that are available. I'm Stephanie Brown, and I'm a recruiter currently based in Bermuda. And I'm really excited to share my screen with Vanessa Robinson. Hi, Vanessa. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, Steph. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You're so welcome. So, before we get into the weeds of the different opportunities in this area, if you can just share with us your experience as a HR professional, that would be a really good place to start.
Sounds good. Absolutely. So I began my career actually about 17 years ago. I didn't know what I was going to do. I was studying sociology and social anthropology, and I had this wonderful, amazing opportunity at a Big Four accounting firm to partner with their only HR employee. And so I got thrown into the mix and I absolutely loved it. So since then, I have been working both in-house as well as outsourced HR. So I've had many clients across lots of different industries, and I've worked permanently within the insurance and reinsurance industry, as well as I've worked in unionized and not unionized environments. So I've had quite a bit of experience across different industries.
Oh, fantastic. Well, exactly why I asked you to share my screen. So thank you. So if we can start then talking about human resource management, because obviously that's like the sort of general high level bracket we put everything in. Can you talk us through the different areas in human resources? Because there are quite a few different things people can do.
Absolutely, yeah. No, there's a couple of different channels that people can take. So typically people will become either a generalist or a specialist towards once they figure out what they like. So a specialist is someone who's going to focus in a specific area, whether it be learning and development, where they will focus on training, career pathways for the employees, making sure that all of the onboarding and the values, the culture of the organization is embedded into everything that the employee does. And then there's also employee relations, which is actually my background. I have a master's in employee relations, and it's fantastic because you actually get to get in there, you get to speak with the employees, you get to build that relationship, but you do also have to have some challenging conversations, right? So an employee relations professional might, in a unionized environment, for example, be the primary contact for the union. Or if there are any contentious issues, they typically would be the one to deal with it. Then there's also compensation and benefits. So that's where you would typically find our payroll individuals. We would also have our total rewards individuals. So people who actually calculate and try and identify what the market would pay for particular roles and make sure that the employer is still remaining competitive in relation to their market industry. And of course, one that you're so familiar with is recruitment. So there are several recruitment agencies within Bermuda as well. In general, recruitment is fantastic because you get to meet so many people, not only if you're in-house or your own independent recruiter, but you get to meet so many people as well from all over the world, and you get to build the rapport with them, get to understand what makes them tick and what are they looking for, and you get to help them in that career journey.
Yeah, I definitely agree that the recruitment definitely is great because you get to meet lots of different types of people and stuff. But
Yeah.
explaining the different areas within HR is really good for people to understand, because as I've recruited for these kind of positions, I've found that typical someone in comp and bends is really more, I'd say, kind of back office within the team. You come in from maybe an accounting or an analytical kind of background, whereas you've got different skill sets then for someone that's doing employee relations. The communication skills and things there are really kind of important. I've obviously found my niche within the spectrum as such, but yeah, thank you for explaining and talking us through the different areas. Can you give us an idea on, so someone that's thinking of getting into this kind of profession, where can they start and how does it sort of progress?
So absolutely, there are so many avenues to get into HR, which is also why I got so excited about getting into HR and helping more junior HR professionals grow in their career, because you don't have to have such a defined path. Oh, I must have education in human resources, and then I must, make sure I get an HR job. To your point earlier, when we were talking about, the comp and bends typically having someone in that role who's more analytical. My first employer, the HR manager, she was actually an accountant. So you can absolutely take whatever career that you're good at, your skills, your transferable skills, and turn that more into an HR focus. So, for example, if there are individuals who have historically been teachers and they want to get into human resource, well, they might transition into human resources, for example, into learning and development. Or if you have someone who has previously been, again, an accountant, but they want to find out a little bit more about the local benefits, right? Whether it be health insurance, social insurance, payroll tax, they might also consider going into those types of industries and touching the human resources element of it. So you don't necessarily have to follow that prescribed plan to get into human resources. You certainly can. You generally want to have some sort of education or experience that has those transferable skills related to HR. So sociology and social anthropology, my first degree, that led me into my master's degree in human resources. And I focused a lot in my sociology degree on the behavioral science classes. And that was fantastic and led me right into my employee relations course. So it just depends on your personality and what makes you tick, what excites you, and what you think you can actually envision yourself doing for decades to come.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I've seen so many people. Well, I fell into what I do, even though it's not sort of core HR. But I think if you like people, you're good at communicating, there's lots of opportunities in this area for you. Can we talk a little bit more about, because sometimes you'll see job titles and just kind of understanding what would someone do on a typical day. So if there's a role and you start as a HR administrator, I mean, what's a typical day look like, or what duties come under that, Vanessa?
Sure. Yeah, I can talk through all of those. So typically someone starting off in human resources would begin as an HR administrator or an HR assistant. Different companies use certain titles interchangeably, but an HR administrator would typically support a more senior HR individual in an organization. And where the senior individual is looking at the more strategic tasks, setting the HR strategy, doing any sort of workforce planning, the HR administrator is really going to be a very key support to that. So if, for example, they needed some additional research or context based on market, that HR admin might be able to assist with that. Now, different organizations obviously present different opportunities in terms of job responsibilities. So there certainly will be some HR admin or HR assistant roles within companies where they are very paper driven, shall I say. And thankfully we are in a generation where we're moving away from paper, but HR in general, you will find these more junior roles is going to be very process driven.
Mm-hmm. So I think someone should have strong administrative skills then. And I think it's a good probably place to start if you were doing, I guess, onboarding of new staff, dealing with the benefits providers and things. I mean, it's a good way to kind of understand things and then kind of build on it as well. So I see that people tend to go in HR admin or coordinator, spend a few years, and then, like you say, take on some more of the other tasks, like maybe around employee relations and things, once they know they want to get into it and they've done some courses. So we've got HR sort of admin, and what typically is the next step, Vanessa?
Typically, it would be an HR generalist. So again, it depends on the organization that you're in. If you're in an organization where you're going to specialize, you'll find one of those areas quite specific. But if you're in an organization where you can touch more, which is really what my career path was, it's great because you get more exposure to a lot of stuff. And the generalist is someone who's going to be a little bit more experienced, will be a little bit more employee facing perhaps than an HR admin or assistant. They will have a little bit more autonomy in their tasks, and they will be reporting into typically someone more senior than them. So the generalist in most organizations, they would be interviewing more junior level roles, coordinating like student programs, assisting with scholarships, helping with, similar to what you said earlier, the benefits, all of those types of things, but with a little bit more of independence.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely makes sense. So once you've been a generalist for a while, I mean, I've seen some people actually just like to kind of stay in that position. But what's the upward sort of mobility from there?
So the next step would be generally an HR manager. Some organizations use HR manager and HR director interchangeably. Both of them are senior HR roles where there's going to be a lot more influence into the organizational HR strategy. And it will also require a lot more seasoned experience. So if you're going to be interviewing individuals, you're going to be typically interviewing for example, if you're going to be dealing with employee relations, you're the one on the front line of that. You're doing the investigations, you're having the difficult conversations, conducting any sort of terminations necessary, for example. So you really have to be in a position where you understand all of the employment law for your jurisdiction, as well as any sort of immigration policy. You have to know enough to be able to make those decisions so that you're mitigating any sort of risk.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, it sounds like there's lots of opportunity. It's a clear line of progression, and it's definitely a busy role. And I think the thing we can both agree on is, working in HR related roles is that, you never know from day to day. You're dealing with employees, so anything can kind of happen. And still, in my careers, I'm sure it is with yours, that there's still something new, some kind of new question that comes up. There's like, okay, that's the first, that's a new one, and still. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's what keeps it exciting though, right?
yeah, definitely. So if someone was thinking of moving into HR, what kind of qualifications would you recommend that they look at?
So there's a few options. It also depends on if they want to be more of a specialist or a generalist. We'll take it from the specialist perspective. So there's a couple of organizations. One is in the US and one is in the UK. There is also one in Canada as well. I'll talk about the US one first, which is called SHRM, or Society for Human Resource Management. And in the UK, there is the CIPD. So the SHRM is actually great because it does align quite a bit with what we do from a business practice, HR practice in Bermuda. The legislation that is in the US obviously does not apply to Bermuda at all. And in the UK, the CIPD certification is actually something that the law might align a little bit more to Bermuda, but both designations are still highly credible and worthy of any sort of study. So I have a SHRM designation, and there's also international designations under SHRM. So there's a certified professional within HR, there's a senior certified professional. All of these designations actually require hours and hours of studying and sitting an examination. So I had to actually try, I don't think you need to do that now, but when I got my designation some years ago, I had to travel to the US. I had to sit in an examination center, and you found out right then and there if you passed or failed. And so it's great because you are studying, you are doing all of those practice tests, and you're able to use these credentials in your resume, in your business cards, on your signature. And it just shows that you are truly committed to continuous learning and professional development for yourself and not just others. But as I said, there's also ones in Canada as well. And they're, depending on if you're going to be a specialist or a generalist, you can get a designation, as you know, in recruitment, as well as compensation and other areas.
Yeah, I've definitely found there's quite a few that you can look at just to gain more knowledge and bolster kind of your position or your interests and things. But I definitely see that a lot of people in HR, specifically in Bermuda, are kind of working in HR with no formal sort of training as such, just kind of like people. And yeah, it's definitely something that you can get into without too much of a commitment from my experience, which is great for people on the island. So what do you think are going to be the key traits someone has to have to kind of do well in HR, or just to enjoy doing this kind of work?
First thing I would say is emotional intelligence. There I've heard some stories from employees who've had bad experiences with previous HR professionals. And quite frankly, they didn't trust HR. They didn't know if they could. They felt like things weren't confidential. They didn't feel like HR understood them. So being able to have that confidentiality and emotional intelligence with your colleagues to build that relationship of trust is, in my opinion, number one, because you work with the people that you like, right? In business, period. And so when you are able to be fair in holding people accountable, but also realize that these are people too, I think those are really good traits for anyone that wants to work in HR.
Yeah, definitely agree. Cool. Well, I think that was all my questions. Is there anything else that you want to sort of add in terms of someone that's thinking of getting into this area? Are there any sort of tips or anything else you would say before we wrap up?
The only thing I would like to add is relating to industries. So many people aspire to be in a certain industry because they think that's where, whether it be the best career path or the best finances, whatever it may be that they're striving towards. But my piece of advice would be consider all industries. Having made a shift in industries myself, I am enjoying it so much. And take that leap of faith and realize that things are going to truly be worth it if you make the best of it. So don't be locked in. Make sure that you do your research, obviously, but be open to all opportunities.
That's really fantastic, and I'm glad that you kind of brought that up because I find that no matter what we do, whether it's an accountant, like it's always different in each company. Everyone has the nuances, and I think to grow as a person and a professional, it's the more experience you can get. And I think that that's good if you can work for an outsourced firm sometimes because you get to go into different companies and do
Yes,
different things, and it
absolutely.
can broaden
Absolutely.
the experience for sure. And that's the good thing about Bermuda. I mean, we have so many different industries here.
Mm,
So I think it's hard to actually just stay in one as well. So that's a really good point. Thanks for
mm,
that, Vanessa.
yeah, absolutely.
So if you've enjoyed listening to Vanessa talk about human resources management, then please do go ahead and share within your networks, and hopefully together we'll help raise the awareness of the Bermuda employment opportunities. Thank you.